What's going on, everybody? Gunner here, and today I want to talk to you guys about how to make your big flies castable. Check it out. Check this out. This is like a 13-inch Mark Sadati yak hair slammer, and it's weighted the way he does it. This is weight balanced for casting. I literally have lead over the entire shank, plus 4 stacks of 4 pieces of lead cut to about 1/2 inch for a keel box. The thing is heavy. Now check this out. Backhand caster. It just goes and goes and goes. It's like a 90-foot cast. So Mark Sadati's technique here, weight balancing flies, right? What is it? Well, basically, it's just a principle. And you can break it down to the simplest form, which is weighting a fly relative to its air resistance, right? So small flies, low profile shapes, they don't need a lot of weight. A lot of times just the hook is enough for that fly to cast extremely well. As the fly gets bigger, you need to add more weight. And what weight does. So a lot of times you're going to see me cast a big fly in a 4-weight. You get a lot of silly comments like, why are you doing that? Are you going to fish with a 4-weight? That's not ethical. Yeah, we get it. But the point is, by using a really light line, my line doesn't have very much momentum. And a wind-resistant fly will collapse it. And I might only be able to cast 20 feet or 25 feet with a big fly in a 4-weight. Now, when you add weight to a fly, you increase the fly's momentum, because what you have to understand is a weightless fly can only drag on your fly line. That's all it can do. Something that's weightless and air resistant. You go to cast it and it's like a big parachute on that thing. Now, traditionally, you increase the mass or the line size of the fly line. You go from a 6-weight to an 8-weight or an 8-weight to a 10-weight. You increase the mass to increase the momentum. But what you can do is, instead of changing your line, you just weight the fly to increase the momentum of the fly, so that instead of dragging on the fly line, it flies with the fly line, because it now has momentum all on its own. And so that's the principle, because what you're trying to do is maximize your efficiency, because when you increase the line size, the inefficiency of a wind-resistant fly, it's still there. It didn't go anywhere. You're just trying to compensate for it. But if you can make it more efficient, now you have a more efficient tool on a heavier line, and the thing can soar. So that's what it's all about. That's weight balancing flies in a nutshell. So this is something that I'm still learning. I'm still grasping. This is something that I've been able to play with for about a year, and I've had some crazy success with it. Like this big slammer, it's 13 inches long. I can cast this thing 100 plus feet repeatedly over and over and over again. I've also made some assumptions and weighted flies way too heavy and couldn't cast the thing to save my life. So I don't want to present something that I don't fully understand. And this is Mark Sadati's ideas and his techniques, and I want to simply equip you with the tools to figure this out on your own. So first and foremost, there's going to be a link to an article that Mark wrote on weight balancing flies, along with YouTube tutorials that are all Mark's, featuring his yak hair slammer and his feather slammer, so that you guys can see how he integrates the weight. If you want to truly understand this stuff, you guys got to do some homework. Watch his videos, see how he uses the weight, why he's doing it, how much he's doing, and just have that for your reference. So what I want to do is I just want to equip you guys with a simple technique on how to figure this out on your own, because honestly, it'll take you 5 minutes to do it the next time you go fishing, or you could spend a whole day doing it and figure it out for every single fly that you like to tie, right? You have to do a little bit of homework on your end. But the reason why, instead of just showing you, well, I use this much weight for this pattern and this much weight for that size, this is unbelievably nuanced. Because when you add weight to a fly, we're talking about adding weight to overcome a fly's wind resistance. Well, what adds weight? What contributes to the weight? Well, different hooks. Different hooks, stinger hooks, wires, beads, the epoxy dome on an eye, or maybe you're going to use a sticker eye. Maybe you have rattles. Is it a large rattle, medium rattle, small rattle? And it's not that, tweaking one of these things is going to mess up a whole fly. It's not. But when you tweak 3 of them or 4 of them, It all adds up, and then you make a fly that's way too heavy and you can't cast it, or you make one that's light and it's not very efficient, right? And so the simple thing is that if I can equip you with how to figure this out on your own, then you can apply it to your flies the way you tie them, the way you'd like to tie them, and you have all the knowledge that you need. You don't need to follow anybody else or make assumptions, because you can figure it out, dial it in, and apply it immediately. So check it out. So this technique is literally about as simple as it gets, and the only thing you need is some lead wire in whatever diameter you have. It doesn't really matter, but I have 030, and then you need a shank, literally just a shank. And I'll take a picture of this so you guys can see everything, but what you do is you tie your tippet to the shank and you false cast your fly, and then you add some lead wire to the shank and you false cast your fly, and then you add some lead wire to your shank until you find how much you need. It's really that simple. Now, there's a few nuances to this that you want to get right. One, you fish your flies wet. So when you weight balance it and you figure out how much lead you need, do it wet. So try to do it on the water, or dunk your fly in a 5-gallon bucket and do it in your backyard, and put it back in the bucket and do it in your backyard, like whatever you got to do. Second thing, when you put the lead on the wire or on the shank, use a specific length. 4 inches or 6 inches, and you want it to be kind of drastic so that you can see and feel the difference, right? Don't just add an inch. An inch of 030 is like nothing, okay? But like 4 or 6 inches, and if you do that consistently, 6, 12, 18, all right, somewhere between 12 and 18 felt good. Let's take 3 off. Now I'm at 15. Ooh, that feels sweet. Okay, 15 inches, right? This isn't rocket science. It's just a little bit of homework. That's all it is. And so if you do it that way, you don't have to keep track of everything. Don't count turns or anything like that, because your shank diameter and hook diameters are all going to be different. Just measure it out. 6 inches, 4 inches, 3 inches, whatever you want to do. Make it long enough that it's significant so that you can feel it, you can see it, because there's going to be a difference. And that's all you got to do. And then all right, this slammer, I put 20 inches of 030 on it, cast like a dream, wet. So next time I tie a slammer this big, that's what I'm going to use, right? It's really that simple. And then let's say you want to tie like a big tube fly. Same thing applies, but you're not going to put a shank to the hook eye. You can just pop the hook out, put the lead on the hook, and then suck it back up in there and false cast it until you figure out how much lead you need, and then you'd apply that lead to the tube. So the last thing I want to touch on is, are these flies going to jig? Because people always think you put 20 inches of lead on a fly, the thing's going to drop like a rock. But we have to understand, when you balance it relative to wind resistance, all of that weight is also relative to water resistance, right? Things that drop like a rock have a lot of weight, low resistance. These flies are 12 inches long, 10 inches long. They're full-bodied flies, right? No matter how much lead you put in that thing, it's not going to drop like a rock. Now, they will have some head dip or something like that, or you might be able to fish it 2 feet down on a floating line and a slow retrieve, but that's not the purpose of the weight, right? And so the great challenge to me is to design a weight balanced fly that suspends level and shows its profile and doesn't drop that fast, right? Trying to create air pockets, or adding foam, things like that, or trying to put my weight in a certain place on the shank, or weight it with a stinger hook to help drop it back, or tie it on a tube fly for that same purpose, right? That's the fun design thing, because I want my flies to suspend level. Now, traditionally, in the salt, Mark fishes these really fast, constant retrieves, 2-hand retrieves, fishing it in riptides and currents and river mouths, and there's always constant animation going on. So that weight, the fly's never dipping head down. Now in a still water situation, e-socks, musky fishing, you might want to try to balance that. That's what I like to do, right? But as everything, as always, it's just a tool. And now that you have the tool, I hope you apply it. And at the end of the day, if nothing else, you'll learn a fun lesson and hopefully tie better flies. And so that's it, guys. I'm going to keep this video short and sweet, because that's all it needs to be. It just needs to be short and sweet. This needs to be something that you play with. It needs to be something that you go home and you do your homework with. You can take your half dozen or dozen favorite flies to the beach and put some lead on a shank and figure it out. And remember, it's all relative and it's all nuanced. It has to do with, let me just explain something, okay? This is how nuanced it is, because it has to do with length, The longer it is, the more wind resistance it has. Crinkle, the more crinkle the fiber has, the more wind resistance it has. Straight fibers, very low resistance. Shape, this is a two-dimensional fly. Obviously it's three-dimensional, but it's very high and tight. The cross-sectional surface area of this, very low wind resistance versus like a big tube, like a beast. It has more wind resistance. The other thing, water weight. Water weight is a good thing for casting, especially a big fly, because that weight helps it cast. It weight balances it, right? That's why you have to do this wet. You might find that one material, which is natural, absorbs a lot of water. You don't need a lot of weight. If you do it synthetic, you might need to add more weight because you don't have the water absorption. I know that sounds crazy because people don't. You have to try it. And that's why I'm equipping you with a tool to go home and try it yourself. Figure it out for your patterns. So this is weight balancing flies in a nutshell. The tools on how to do it. I hope you try this because when you get it right, it's unbelievably sweet. Like, it is sweet. So thanks for watching. I know this was kind of bloggy and whatnot, but check out those tutorials from Mark. Try to find his article if you can. Give it a read. Go home, do some homework, and tie better flies. See ya.